The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, and to my left there's an empty chair because there's no Doug Van Gelder today. But what a great person to have as our special co-host today. He's the reason you can listen to this on a podcast called MattTalkOnline.com. It's Jason Nutter Butter Bryant. How are you, Jason?
I would have much preferred a Hail Caesar reference. I don't even eat Nutter Butters, man.
It's not that you eat Nutter Butters. It's that you're known as Twinkie, and I just wanted to go with a different brand and a different line of food.
They're not even in the same vein of junk food, okay? And I've heard everything you can think of for the past 22 years about that nickname. So Nutter Butter, I've got to say, you actually got me with something that I've never heard before. However, I'm going to disqualify you because it's not in the same weight class. It's not even in the same. It's like saying it's like comparing freestyle to Greco. They're just not the same.
Well, so would you prefer ho-ho or ding-dong?
Again, heard them all before.
You've
you can't throw anything new at me, Mr. Klingman.
Well, I did with Nutter Butter.
At the Cedar Valley are getting really funny. Scott's back there behind the glass laughing. He can't even contain his laughter right now. He can hear him through the glass. I prefer Iowa now.
I prefer the New Brighton compadre. That's ours. That's what we use.
That is ours. Absolutely.
Well, you are back in the United States, and you're going to be back in France soon, but I'm fascinated with what took place at the Junior Worlds. The United States won the Junior World Championships, first time since 1984, but it was fully contested this time. You were there. You saw it transpire. Just overall feeling of winning a Junior World Championships and what that's going to mean for our country and the sport.
You know, we've seen a lot of emphasis, and I know Ben Askren and Tommy Rowlands explained this on kind of their podcast the other day, and the emphasis from Team USA on the age group and the developmental styles. We're seeing freestyle and Greco managers and coordinators controlling the entire system. We're seeing emphasis put on the Cadet World Championships since they were reinstated, I believe, in 2010. So we're getting youngsters into the pipeline to come out more frequently to the Olympic Training Center. And, you know, we've got 2020 camps looking through 2020, and then there will be 2024 camps. So identifying these athletes is kind of a key component. And then also you put them into situations, guys like Mark Hall with the training situation with the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club in Penn State, and Zaid Valencia with Sunkissed Kids in Arizona State. And you just factor all those things together, and it's like the perfect storm for cultivating and developing elite talent. The last couple of years, the U.S. team has been very, very good. They've been on the cusp of winning a world championship. But this year's team, it was like, you know, sitting there with members from, actually, it was a pretty good contingent of Americans that were there working for United World Wrestling. Andrew Hips from Intermat, Richard Immel from USA Wrestling, myself, Bill May, who is a native Minnesotan who lives in the Czech Republic. We had a crew of Americans just sitting there watching this unfold. And granted, we couldn't have any rooting interests in terms of what we were doing work-wise. It was a sight to see. I mean, because the only situation where I saw a day, like when we had, 4 wrestlers medal at that day, it's like, wow, had this ever happened before? The only thing comparable I could see from a performance standpoint was the women's freestyle performance in 2003, where all 7 wrestlers medaled and tied Japan in the team score, and Japan had the most medals, most golds to win the team title, but had never seen a performance like that in one day from the United States. So it was pretty special, you know, hearing that Star Spangled Banner overseas in a wrestling competition. There's very few feelings, whether you're just watching or you're involved in it. I wouldn't know what it's like as a wrestler. I mean, I've been on the staff from a media standpoint to hear it, but just when you sit there and you hear the anthem play and you see the Stars and Stripes sitting there above the Russian Federation and above Iran and above the former Soviet republics, it's just a special thing to see. And, you know, one of those things where, I mean, it's kind of cliche to say, but you kind of had to be there. You kind of had to be there to really grasp the volume of what actually happened.
In being there, did you feel like the team race was a storyline as you watched all of the action take place?
Yeah, and what's interesting is because they only score it with placement points. So you really don't have the ongoing advancement and match scoring situations like we do with our collegiate system. They're not scored that way. So you had people on the internet. I mean, I had a notebook. I was keeping up with it, going back and forth, looking at placements. I know that just social media was lighting up with people posting pictures of their spreadsheets and here's what I got, here's what I got, here's what I got. And I'm trying to keep tabs of that while broadcasting those finals. And ultimately it comes down to the last match. With Gable Steveson from Apple Valley. The guy's going in to be a high school senior, and he's won a junior world title at age 17. So the team scoring component was a huge storyline, especially for the Americans. So to be able to keep tabs on that was actually a job into itself.
And pretty crazy when you look at the results just from the United States point of view. You had 3 golds, you had 3 silvers, and a bronze. You would think, wow, what a dominant performance. But like you said, it was just 1 point over Russia. And so when you look at the whole of that and who's leading the way, it is pretty interesting, like you said, that there's not advancement points. It's just what you place at the end of the day. And so when you have a system like that, it probably makes it hard to follow a little bit.
It is, because officially the points aren't added until after the weight class is completed. Now, United World Wrestling, what they've done with their system, they've upgraded it over the years. So when they get to the medal matches, you're wondering, okay, well, who's 7 through 10? Well, there are classification points that are established when you win a match. So if you win a match by fall, that's 5. If you win a match by technical superiority, that's 4. You win by a decision, that's 3. So you will accrue those type of classification points. Now, once you get past the top 5, and it's funky because it goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. And your points are 10, 9, 8, 8, 6, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, because there's no 4th place and there's no 6th place because you've got 2 bronzes. So you've got the 7 through 10 placements going into the medal rounds. So then you can kind of, okay, everybody in the medal rounds and the bronze medal matches are guaranteed at least 6 points. It's +2 if you win. Similar to how you get to the NCAA finals. Okay, you're in the finals. You've got your 12. It's +4 if you win. So with a little bit of tinkering of your brain, you can figure it out. But it's still not a smooth process to try to follow.
We are on the mat with Jason Bryant of MatTalkOnline.com. Special co-host today because we don't have Doug Van Gelder. Make sure to stick around for segment 2 and 3. We have one guest, Tommy Rowlands, 2-time NCAA champion, will be on the line with us as we talk with Jason about the Junior Worlds and what that means. Do you think that will transition into future results on the senior level?
Well, that's kind of the hope, and that's the goal. That's why they're doing this, is to make sure that the athletes are prepared. I mean, Dayton Fix is just phenomenal in terms of his ability to score from the top position in parterre. So that's definitely something that's an international trait that we in the U.S. have typically lacked, is that go-to parterre offense. So I think these guys are really set up to do well going into 2020 and possibly beyond. There's still some guys that are in the way on the men's freestyle side that aren't ready to give up those spots going into 2020. And, the Olympic year, we saw what happened in 2016. Guys come out of the woodwork and make the team that aren't expected to. And we saw that in 2012. We see people just get ready to go. But this is a good group coming through, an experienced group. And I'd say that there's going to be a handful of these guys on that 2020 team.
We both like history. Would you say that this has done something, this Junior World Championship, now that we're looking retroactively at seeing who the medalists were? Do you think this kind of heightens this event in the United States a little bit?
I think it does, because what we've seen since the Soviet breakup, and you can go back and look at the numbers on the Olympic champs, and Tommy will probably mention this as well, because this was a topic that they had on their show, and I'm kind of stealing his thunder a little bit. But you go backwards, look at the Olympic champs in the last 2 quads, and look at did they come through the Junior World Championships? Did they compete there? Were they the best in their country wrestling at the world level? And how did that translate to the shot that they had the Olympics or the senior level world championships? And I think there is a correlation. It's kind of hard to put that into United States terms, because we're the exception. We're not the rule. So, well, this guy didn't do this and he was on a Junior World team. Well, look at Azerbaijan, look at Kyrgyzstan, look at, Uzbekistan, all these countries, Turkey, that have put guys continually on cadet and junior teams that have gone into the senior level. So I think it pretty much it bodes well.
You're going to be in France for the Senior World Championships. Do you have a vibe on how they're looking right now?
I do not, because I have not had the opportunity to get to any of the training camps. The only thing I've really picked up is watching videos from Track Wrestling and from Flow about the various team camps that have been going on. I know that the freestyle team heads out for acclimation camp in Germany, I believe this weekend, and I think they'll spend a week there. I was talking with Cody Bickley briefly today about their travel plans. I know I don't leave until I think the 18th or 19th, and I'll have another birthday overseas, and we'll get to roll in Paris.
Now, with everything that's going on, we can transition into college. Is Pat Downey, who was unceremoniously let go at Iowa State, going to be a Hawkeye?
I haven't talked to Pat. I've kind of steered clear of the Downey drama because, I've had conversations with him and his dad over the years. And, I basically, I don't do the whole news breaking stuff as much anymore. So I'm kind of curious on how that's just going to play out, just more or less as a fan, and say, all right, when the dust settles, we'll talk here. But, I think I know just as much as anybody else does, basically, with the hints on his social media, the ones that are actually safe for work. And he's putting pictures of himself looking like he's dressed in Hawkeye gear. I know that there's an interesting dichotomy of fans who they don't want Downey in Iowa City, and then there's fans like, well, once he's a Hawk, we'll root for him. I mean, I've never seen a situation where one guy is not even a part of a program, has already divided kind of a fan base. I mean, I've even read the people that were like, they will not cheer for him even though they're Hawkeye fans. So it's kind of weird on what this guy is going to bring to the table. I mean, he brings a wealth of talent, tenacity. The guy's phenomenal, but there's a little bit of baggage that comes with him. And I'm just, like I said, I'm going to sit down and wait and see where this clears, because there's been situations where guys were set to come to Iowa in the past that might have had a little baggage, and at the last minute they had to end up going elsewhere. So nobody with the resume or track record that Pat's had, but I mean, I think he's going to win wherever he ends up. Just depends on whether he gets that one shot at it a semester or he gets a full year.
We're on the mat with MatTalkOnline.com's own Jason Bryant. We're talking about the college season now. Nick Sirianno, 125-pounder for Penn State, will transfer likely to Rutgers, and there's just some hang-up right there on whether he will be released by the Big Ten. There were some reports that Penn State didn't release him, but they did. Where does that lie right now on his transfer?
This is going to be basically contradict what I just said, because I said I was not in the most breaking news situation. I'm actually trying to pursue what this actually means. And there have been stories back and forth, and NewJersey.com, NJ.com has kind of had the lead on some of this stuff. Some of their facts have been up in the air in terms of what people believe to be true or whatnot. So I'm still looking to get a official comment from the Big Ten on what the policy is. What is the situation? There's a lot of people that think they know the rule, but nobody has actually gotten the Big Ten conference on record. Matter of fact, I went down to try to track down their compliance directory yesterday. You go to their directory, there's not even a phone number or an email. So I'm trying to go through the media ops, and this is not a media question. This is a simple compliance question. So before anything is even out there, I just want to know, one, okay, it sounds like he's been released. Well, the Big Ten rule is that if it's an interconference transfer, you burn a year. Now, Steven Micic left Northwestern to go to Michigan. He thought he was going to lose a year. He actually ended up getting a year because they were getting a year back because of a waiver. I believe it was because when Periano was let go, there was the situations that said, okay, well, you get the waiver. Well, the waiver is so rare, and the rules changed, I believe, 4 years ago. So I am still waiting for 100% confirmation on what the actual rule is and how this waiver comes into play. I will give the Open Mat a bit of a plug here, because Alex Steen wrote a column today that's part of their Prime membership. It is behind a paywall, but it kind of laid out what I'm trying to explain a little bit better than I am right now, because it's, he had some conversations with Ryan Dunleavy, who wrote the story for NJ.com, and how the information has flowed back and forth. Now, my understanding, yes, there's been a release. My understanding is that Penn State allegedly hasn't signed off on a waiver request. Now, again, in referencing what Alex Steen wrote, that is not necessarily a guarantee or a disqualifier from getting a waiver. They're still probably going to apply for a waiver. But again, I'm still waiting for the Big Ten to answer my inquiries, or any compliance director within the Big Ten. I've reached out to Northwestern. I've reached out to Minnesota. I've reached out to a couple schools to give me the exact rules, so we know what the exact situation can be played out. That way it's not he said, she said in the media. So right now, that's what I know.
Everyone will likely pick Penn State to win the Division I championships in 2018, but there's a team that is lurking in the shadows, Ohio State. When you look at the lineup, you have 3 returning NCAA champions led by Kyle Snyder. You just now have a guy that just got a bronze medal at the Junior World Championships, and Colin Moore, and the list goes on with the Jordans. Is this a team that we need to be more careful thinking that they could win it this upcoming season?
Yeah, especially if some of the rumors are floating around about a high-profile transfer that may or may not be matriculating in Columbus soon. So I think you ask that question in 2 weeks, the response may be a bit different. Right now, they're definitely contenders, and that's even before he who shall not be named may enter campus.
So when you look at Penn State and just what happened at the Junior Worlds with just a great performance overall by the Junior Worlds, but it's led by 74 kilos and Mark Hall. Where is he going to fall in all this? Has he improved since that freshman year? Does this Junior World Championship just take him to another level going into a sophomore season?
I think a lot of it's about confidence. We know how talented and technical he is, but there's the saying, when you see somebody that places as, let's say, a sophomore or a junior, and they weren't expected to be an All-American, and then all of a sudden the next season they start wrestling like they're an All-American. I'm going to use Chris Weidman for an example. When he wrestled at Hofstra, his junior year, he was second in the CAA, got pinned in the finals by Adam Wright from Old Dominion, goes out, upsets Wynn Mihalik, reaches the NCAA semis. He's an All-American, and he's like, who unseeded? It's like, okay. Then the next year he comes back and wrestles like it. He wrestles like he's an All-American. He wrestles like he's been there before. And this is where I see wrestlers that have success early, or they break through and they win a title early. Now, Mark Hall is going to wrestle like he's an NCAA champion. He's got the target on his back. The kid is very calm. He's very cool. He doesn't get too frazzled now. He did have some freshman jitters earlier this year, but guess what? By March, they were gone. He won an NCAA title. Controversial as that semi may have been, or that final may have been, he won. He's at the top of the podium. He knows what that feels like, and I don't think he's going to relinquish what that feels like. I'm not saying he may go undefeated the next 3 years, because I think there's the ability for these people out there to pick him off, because, yeah, everybody can have a bad match, everybody can be out-wrestled, but ultimately I think he's gotten better. I think he'll continue to get better. I think he's already blowing people away in terms of his bonus point potential. So I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet by any means when it comes to folk style wrestling.
We got to close out the show, but Jason, are you a little sad that Northern Iowa and ODU are no longer in the same conference?
I am actually very disappointed about that, because we didn't actually get to really exploit that between us. I mean, we had I went to West Gym once, and I couldn't make the MAC championships this year at the McLeod. And it was just like, it was just like this meeting of the minds. Kyle and JB again together, like wrestling 4-1-1, and now we can like have little bets with one another and pick and prod. And you did that anyway. You sent me all sorts of text messages about ODU.
I know,
I know, Kyle. I know. But it was fun, and I have a lot of respect for Doug Schwab and the UNI program. So had a chance to really learn a lot about the program and the wrestling club through the Panther Wrestling Club editions here on the Mat. So. Wish Coach Schwab and the Schwab mob and the Panther train the best of luck in the Big 12.
Great interview with Jason Bryant. Make sure to check out MatTalkOnline.com. Stick around for 2 segments with 2-time NCAA champion Tommy Rowlands next on the Mat.
Log on and listen online at 1650thefan.com, the online home of 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the Mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum. Our guest for today, an exciting wrestler, and he happened to be in the heavyweight division of the sport. That's rare to say, but I don't think we'd have someone on if he wasn't dynamic in the heavyweight class. His name's Tommy Rowlands, 2-time NCAA champion for Ohio State University, and you also probably know his product line, Rudis, which we will also talk about. Welcome to the show, Tommy.
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great having you on. I love your story. I think you started out maybe as a 125-pounder and then grew every single year in high school. Take us through that evolution and how you got to the heavyweight class.
Yeah, you have a good memory. Quite some time ago, but yeah, my father was a wrestler at the collegiate level for a couple of years at Ohio University and was a high school wrestling coach for a couple of years, and then he went into the business world. At any rate, that's how I got exposed to wrestling. And he's only 5'11", and wasn't a big guy, not a small guy either. But by any stretch, did we think I would become a heavyweight? And so going into high school, I was very underdeveloped, hadn't quite hit the growth stages that a lot of young boys hit at that age. and I was 5'7", 140 my freshman year of high school, and decided to cut to 25 and was a lighter guy. So I came up through the ranks as a youth, wrestling at the lower and middle weights, and then I hit puberty, and every year got bigger. I wrestled 160 my sophomore year, 189 my junior year, and 215 my senior year, and I grew every year with that. So it wasn't really like I even added a whole lot of mass. I was kind of a skinnier guy my senior year, no different than my freshman year, just a lot taller. So I went up a few weight classes, and I got recruited to wrestle in heavyweight. Although when I was getting recruited, I didn't really believe that I would be a heavyweight. I think at the time I was 6'3", 200 pounds, and just had never envisioned myself being a heavyweight, and got recruited and wrestled a couple tournaments at 97 my redshirt year, and then couldn't make the weight anymore. And I was growing and had another 4.5 years of college left. So made the commitment to heavyweight and haven't looked back since.
And that's really the reason why you were offensive minded, because you did have a unique style where you hit stuff that heavyweights didn't hit. You were hitting low singles, you were hitting great shots and stuff you just really didn't typically see out of that class. Is it because you started lighter?
I think that has a lot to do with it. Perhaps that has a lot to do with it more than just being taught wrestling from a very, versatile, dynamic perspective. I never was exposed as a wrestler. My dad did a good job of exposing me to multiple coaches, multiple vantage points. And I guess the lens that I was taught in for wrestling is that there's really no right or wrong way to do something. You just got to, put points on the board, be aggressive, and find ways to score. And so that, with having to wrestle light and middleweights, I wasn't a guy that hung around in the tie up and did a lot of, high single legs or anything that, is traditional upper weight type skills. I guess I learned and enjoyed the fact that you could attack any part of the body. And I always was brought up and taught and felt like, if my opponent has to defend every part of his body instead of maybe the mid-level part of his body, then I'm going to be a better wrestler and more likely to win by virtue of that. So, I always tried to attack every part of the body. So that included low singles, swing singles, high crotches, underhooks, 2-on-1, front headlocks, you name it. I was trying to learn it and perfect it. So it was a great thing for me. And I think timing and luck a lot played into it. So when you have that skill set built in and you become a bigger guy, I think, not just me, but, a lot of other guys have proven that really plays to your favor at the upper weight. So I was thankful for that.
When you were at Ohio State, you won 2 NCAA championships. You won an 02 and 04, but I've heard that you were told, hey, you got to bulk up to get into the heavyweight class, but you found that it was actually better for you to be a little bit lighter so you can feel quicker and on point. Is that pretty accurate on how you felt like you could wrestle your best?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, that's accurate. I had to bulk up to heavyweight as a freshman. I was too small. I think I weighed 210, 212, something like that. So I got up to about 235 pounds going into my redshirt freshman year. And by the end of my redshirt freshman year, I weighed in for the NCAA finals at 219. And I went into my sophomore year trying to get as big as I could. Didn't get much bigger, got up to like 236 or 7. But I think I had less fat, more muscle mass. And by the NCAA finals, my sophomore year, I think I weighed around 227 or 228. And at that time, I think I found, the perfect equilibrium, so to speak, at what was good for me and what worked for me. But my opponent at the time that was, we were clashing pretty much all the time at that point. Steve Mako was getting really massive, and I became reactive instead of being, hey, I'm the defending national champion. He's got to chase me. By virtue of just youth and inexperience, I became reactive to him, hearing that he was getting as big as he was getting up into 300 plus pounds and so on and so forth. That I felt the need to do that as well. So I got up to like 258 or 259 going into my redshirt junior year, and found that I was sluggish no matter how hard I trained. I didn't have the same mobility, the same conditioning, the same cardio. I just wasn't the same guy. And took some tough losses on the chin in the beginning of the year. Also really just had some injuries that I think had a lot to do with just carrying around that extra weight. At that point, I realized that I don't need to chase anything. I need to feel my best, and whatever allows me to feel my best is what I need to do. So from that point moving on, I wasn't as caught up into gaining weight as I was previously. I still found it important to gain strength and get as strong as I could, but gaining weight was just something that didn't concern me at that point because I learned the hard way.
We are on the mat with two-time NCAA champion Tommy Rowlands, won titles for Ohio State in 2002 and 2004. Let's go back a ways to your fifth grade year when you had to wrestle an eighth grade girl, and she was a little bit heavier than you. Now it seems pretty commonplace, but at the time it might have been a little different. What was that like, that experience bumping up and wrestling a female?
Yeah, it was bizarre. I mean, at the time, this was, well, let's see, I'm going to date myself, but this was the early 90s, and I think female wrestling at the time was, slightly taboo. There wasn't a market for it, so to speak, where there was, girls wrestling tournaments, girls events, girls wrestling clubs, so on and so forth. So when a female would wrestle, there was only one way for her to compete, and that was against guys. And at the time, my dad was moving me up in age groups to give me some good competition. And so fifth grade, I'm sitting here and I draw a girl. She was very good at the time, and she's in the eighth grade. So, you can read between the lines here, but a fifth grade guy at the time, I think girls have cooties and you're scared of them. And an eighth grade girl is somewhat developed physically. So,
right.
So, I was pretty intimidated by that whole dynamic. Went out there and lost in overtime. And, as a young kid, that's a pretty, especially the way society was at that time, that was a pretty tough thing to process. But, it's just part of the journey. It was a good experience. And I'm glad that there are, independent entities that now have, girls can wrestle girls. I think it's a great thing. And, but that was an interesting experience for me, to say the least. I'm glad you brought that up, Kyle. I thought we were going to talk about good stuff today.
Well, I wanted it to be a mixed bag, and I thought, hey, that might be fun to talk about that. And you have daughters, so I don't know if you want them to get in the sport too.
No, I do. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she does pretty much everything besides wrestling, but we're always wrestling around with her in the house. I got my boys wrestling her, and I think it's good. I think it's a good thing that opportunity is available to young girls throughout the country, and it's certainly helping our sport. I think that it's a huge calling card for us as we kind of diversify the sport and try to be relevant in every age group and in every kind of a community where those types of metrics matter, proportionality, so on and so forth. So I'm glad we have that opportunity, but no, my daughter does not do it competitively.
Well, going back to the weight class thing, you are interesting in that you were a tweener and yet you were a heavyweight. That usually doesn't happen that way, but you kind of bounce back and forth internationally, at least, between that 211, 213-pound weight class and then the heavyweight division. What goes into that? What makes you think, hey, it's going to be better for me to drop down and maybe I'll bump back up to heavyweight? How did you go through that process in deciding what weight class you were going to be?
Well, I think that in a perfect world, if I could have had a good training environment and not been as caught up into making weight as you need to be sometimes, I probably would have wrestled 211 my whole career. I just felt more at home at that weight class, hitting the skills that I was accustomed to hitting, having some strength and leverage over my opponents that maybe I wouldn't have had at heavyweight. I felt more at home when I was wrestling 211-pounders, but the problem was that I had to train twice a day, 6 days a week, and have a perfect diet to weigh 232 or 3. And then I would cut down from there. So I was definitely a tweener. It was a very tough cut for me. I lost some matches to Americans in particular that I guess I never would have dreamt of losing to, but that's just part of the process. And then at heavyweight, I was successful at heavyweight internationally, but there was just, some size and mass things that probably weren't quite as natural to me as perhaps 211. So I was a tweener. It was a tough decision. I was back and forth. And then, I'm a bit of a realist, Kyle, so I'm happy to talk about it. But there's also, the whole consideration of how do I compete globally against other guys at what specific weight class as well as domestically. What's my best opportunity to get on the team? And then once I do get on the team, what's the greatest likelihood that I'm able to win a gold medal? So you're playing ping pong in your mind about what's best for you on any given year, given those circumstances.
You had a great rivalry with Steve Mocco, who you mentioned earlier. When you have someone like that who's out in front of you and you know the likelihood that you're going to wrestle him is going to be there, what is that like to have a period of time where you know that person's going to be there almost every time you wrestle and you're going to have to compete against them?
So, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but as I look back on it, I think our first match was in December of 2001. And I think our last match we wrestled 18 times. Our last match was, I want to say, in 2011 or 10. So it was pretty much a 10-year battle where we wrestled 18 times, Big Ten championships, Midland finals, NCAA finals, World Team Trial finals, U.S. Open finals. I mean, it's almost like, every match we wrestled was a big deal. And, I look back on that experience for 10 years with someone that has a like mind when it comes to their commitment to the sport, the expectations they have on themselves. And you realize that only one guy is going to get it done on any given year, whatever it is that you're fighting for. And, that whole experience, looking back on it, I feel like it shaped me as a person. I became really in touch with just battling, with just, having to rediscover yourself every day, all the time, knowing that someone else out there is pursuing something with the same passion and vigor and hopeless, desperate expectation that they're also going to get the job done, and you feel the same way. And so I took some on the chin. He took some on the chin. I think we wrestled 18 times. I think I won 7 or 8, and he won 10 or 11. It's hard for me to keep track of it all, but something along those lines. And he beat me off the Olympic team, which is probably the granddaddy of them all when it comes to he and I wrestling. I beat him for some NCAA titles and stuff. So I think if it weren't for each other, we would have had even better careers. So, that whole experience, I've been at the peaks with him being someone that I was able to take out at the most critical moments of my career. And I've also seen some valleys, been at some low points at the hands of Mocco. So, that whole dynamic, it was just really telling and really shaped me as a person. I really had to work through a lot of mental and emotional demons, both good and bad, because of someone like that. That experience just, I'll take that with me the rest of my life. This is, other than war, actual war, I can't think of anything that would be more personal in the competitive sense than some rivalry like that. So, that experience for me was it was everything, and good and bad and everything in between. So I'm thankful for it, and not to say that I appreciate Mocco beating me off the Olympic team, but that entire experience over 10 years, it's something that you'll never forget. It's helped shape you as a person.
An experience that's always fascinated me was that 2004 Ohio State season. You guys had a losing record, and you knew you guys had potential, and it just didn't seem like you could get it together. And then you guys get third place at the NCAA championships. What went into that season, and why you were able to actually culminate with a third-place finish? You won an NCAA championship. What was that season like?
It was bizarre. Quite honestly, on paper, when you look at our team that season, we had 5 guys with 31 wins or more in the starting lineup, and we had 5 guys with, I believe it was 12 wins or less in the starting lineup. So in reality, throughout the whole season, I think we went 8-11 in dual meets. Even though it was a terrible year, we lost to Illinois, who was ranked number 1 at the time, by a nose hair in a dual meet. We had 5 guys ranked, in the top 15 in the country all year. So, going into the Nationals, as far-fetched as it was for everybody outside of our program, I think we kind of knew that what happened was possible, but everybody had to hit. Everybody had to wrestle to their potential, those 5 guys with 31 wins or more. And, they did. And I think only out of the 5 of us, I think I was the only one seated in the top 8. The other 4 guys were seated in top 9 through 13 or 9 through unseated. So we definitely had a great weekend, but it wasn't, each one of those guys overperforming wasn't completely out of this world, their performance. So, yeah, it was a crazy year, a lot of ups and downs, but it was cool to kind of hit a perfect 10 for our program, at least at that time, and get third in the country. It was an awesome experience with, some of my best friends that I've ever had.
And just to mention, too, Ohio State that year got 8th at the Big Tens, and then you went on to get a third-place finish at the NCAA championships. Russ Hellickson's final year, did he have a year or two after that?
He had a couple years after that.
Okay, that's right.
So it was probably the best year he had in those last 5 or 6 years he was coaching, at least I would think.
You keep in touch with Russ?
Absolutely. I'm on a text group with a bunch of ex-Ohio State wrestlers, good friends of mine, and Mitch Clark and Russ is on there. So we text together almost daily, and then I probably see him 4 or 5 times a year, grab breakfast, meet him at a dual meet, something like that. So we keep in good touch. Actually, his grandson and my son are on the same flag football team this fall, so I'm assuming I'll see him a lot more this fall than I usually do.
All right, we have a lot more to talk about with Tommy Rowlands. We're going to be back with more on the mat, 1650 The Fan.
When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Dan Gable Museum. Our guest today, Tommy Rowlands. He was an NCAA champion for Ohio State 2002, 2004, also made a world team in 2007, and we're talking none other than wrestling, but let's also talk about another talent you have, and that's impersonations. Is that something you're still skilled on? Do you still have that vibe that you can impersonate people?
I think back when I had too much time on my hands in college, and a couple years after that, I did a few impersonations, kind of known for it within the Ohio State wrestling program, but I've been too busy to do any of that lately, Kyle.
So you don't have that mojo anymore. You don't even think about doing it or breaking it out.
Oh man, no. And my buddies would be upset to hear me say that, but yeah, I haven't. I haven't impersonated anybody in years. I'm a little bit more boring. I'm married, got 4 kids, and working all the time.
Well, one of the things I remember, you won an NCAA championship in 2002, that same year that was epic at Albany, where Cale Sanderson won 159-0. You were the guy after him that won an NCAA championship, the great cement mixer at 184 pounds. But I remember you being so enthused that you were getting Cale Sanderson's autograph on a Wheaties box. Do you still have that Wheaties box that he signed?
I actually still think I do. I'll have to look in my storage, but it's crazy. It's weird to be. At the time I was a redshirt sophomore when Cale won his 4th title, and it's like in a way, Cale and I were colleagues, so to speak. I mean, he was running for his title. He's only 2 years older than me, but you just kind of knew you were witnessing history at the time, and it was just cool to participate in that, to be in the tunnel warming up, watching Cale win his 4th title. In fact, the ESPN guys had warned us, hey, there's probably going to be a 10 or 12-minute ordeal after he wins here, so don't be prepared to run on the mat right away. And yeah, I mean, getting Cale's signature and being associated with him when he did something like that, I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was just you just knew that what you were seeing was it was rarefied air to be a part of. So even though we were kind of contemporaries, colleagues, so to speak, getting his signature and having a memento for that historic moment was something that was important to me.
And then in 2002, when you won your first title as a sophomore, there was an ESPN documentary on Iowa wrestling called The Season, and you were part of that storyline because you beat Steve Mocco at the end. Did you know that ESPN was doing that, and then you might be part of it?
I think I kind of knew. I think I remember throughout the year, and again, you're dating me, man. This is like 15 years ago. But throughout the year, I remember camera crews following Iowa around, and we kind of knew ESPN was doing something. And then, obviously you put 2 and 2 together. If I'm taking on their freshman who's ranked, number 1 or 2 throughout the year, I'm probably a piece of that story. So yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It was good year for wrestling with Cale and following the Iowa program and all that stuff.
We are on the mat with Tommy Rowlands, 2-time NCAA champion for Ohio State, also co-owner of Rudis, which is an incredible brand. And when you go to wrestling tournaments right now, it is Rudis crazy. You see bags, you see shirts. Your product line really has taken the sport to another level. Take us behind the philosophy and how you've gotten to this level and being such a prominent marketing line and a prominent clothing line in our sport.
Well, I appreciate that, and started the company with Jeff Jordan and Jesse Lang about 3.5 years ago. And I think the premise and the foundation of the business that we started is that we're going to create a brand that just really is authentically and is accurately true, speaks to the wrestling community through the way we work, through the way we service, through the way that we choose to portray the brand, the products, the designs. And so because the three of us are of wrestling and we come from wrestling, I'm not trying to say this any other way. It's just very natural. We don't have to try to be a part of wrestling. We don't have to try to be inclusive of the sport because we feel like we are the sport. It's a way of life for us, and that's our tagline. That's why we did that. And so from there, we've built a good business, and we've hired on a great team of people. I think we've made smart business decisions. We've been very lucky with a lot of the strategic partnerships that we've been able to come across with the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, with Sunkist Kids, obviously with Nancy Schultz coming on later as an equity partner and being aligned with Dave, who I think speaks to the merits of wrestling unlike any other person. And there's a number of other partnerships that we've had. And then just having pre-existing relationships organically within the wrestling community, we've been able to navigate through the space in a way that, it doesn't matter how much business you need to know the back roads and inroads of the wrestling community to be able to align with people and speak to them and be friends with them and take care of them and know who to call and how to relate to them and accomplish, what it is they need accomplished. I mean, I think it's just an organic thing that exists within the partners to start and now exists within our staff, within our employees, and within the walls of Rudis. We've been able to stay connected, and we've had a lot of good fortune. We're not even close to done, not even close. We have the highest expectations you could possibly have in the global wrestling market. And so we're continuing to build out an infrastructure that allows us to do that. And it's fun. I mean, I absolutely love the sport. As we've been doing this interview, you can probably tell it's just part of who I am. It's a way of life for me and my partners and our team. So, it's a labor of love. It's something that we want to continue to do. We want to make wrestling better. And I think that the first way that you do that, it's kind of like when you're on a plane, Kyle, and the stewardess says, make sure that if in the event of an emergency, put the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others. And I think the past 3 or 4 years, that's what we've done is we've built a business and we've built an infrastructure that allows us to have a sustainable business model. And now we're now heading into the kind of the realm where we need to contribute and help and make wrestling better by virtue of our business. And we're going to look to do that in a number of ways.
And so it sounds like you had the vision of what's happening right now, that tournaments, clinics, you just see Rudis every single place you go. That's probably in your vision then, right? Absolutely.
It's to say that we thought it would happen this quickly, to say that, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, when you see people rocking the brand in tournaments, it maybe it gives off the impression that it's easy. It's not. I mean, the managing partner and president of our company, Jesse Lang, who is full-time, 100 hours a week, all things Rudis, which I am not. I am a confidant business partner that really, is intimately involved with the business, but I don't operate the business at all. Jesse is the lifeline of our company. And he's put a lot of hard work into this and built out a great team. And because of that, we're at where we're at. But it's always been the vision. It's always been the expectation. We have a philosophy, and we repeat it often, that we have the same expectations of ourselves that the world-class wrestlers on the mat at the World Championships and Olympics have of themselves. And so that standard of excellence exists within the walls of Rudis. And so when you have that standard for yourself and you have those expectations, you can't help but be looking for more at all times and trying to perfect your craft every day at all times. And that's how we live, in the business. So that's probably why we've had some of our success, but a lot of it's just good fortune and good luck and being aligned with the right people.
We are on the mat with Tommy Rowlands, co-owner of Rudis, two-time NCAA champion for Ohio State University, and a member of the 2007 World Championship team. And as we talk about Ohio State and what that means to you, how much did it mean to you when they won that NCAA team championship in 2016?
It was incredible. On a personal level, and I think that, one thing I've learned, and I learned it after I left the wrestling community on a daily basis and went into business, but one thing I learned is that, things get built most oftentimes than not. The really great things get built generation by generation, and there's building blocks leading up to, that climactic moment where something amazing happens. And so, for me personally, I committed to Ohio State at the time. We were last in the Big Ten. I committed to Russ Hellickson and Kenny Ramsey and Mitch Clark, and we did a lot of good things with the program when I was there and took it to a unique level. But, it starts back with Casey Frederick, who was the coach, and wrestlers from 50, 60, 70 years ago. And it's just the program each decade got a little bit better. And then when Tom Ryan came in and revitalized the program and did a lot of good things kind of on the shoulders and backs of what had gone before him, he was able to take the program to heights that, the program had never seen. And so just to see all of the people, even pre-Tom Ryan era, and their contribution leading up to that moment, and then obviously Tom Ryan and his staff's 10-year run at taking the program to the top of the mountain, so to speak, with all those great athletes, some Ohio kids, some not Ohio kids, some staff members, just a lot of work, Jay Jaggers and Lou Roselli and all those people, just to see everyone down on that mat pulling it off. Logan Stever winning his 4th NCAA title. I mean, it was surreal. And I made sure that even though I'm busy with 4 kids, that my wife and I, we blocked that weekend off. We knew that the program might pull it off and went there and got to be a part of it all. And it was just an amazing experience, something that, quite honestly, I'll never forget.
And I made a mistake there. I said 2016. It was actually 2015 that Ohio State won the championships. We're on the line with Tommy Rowlands, 2-time NCAA champion for Ohio State, co-owner of Rudis. You also have a podcast of your own, the T-Row and Funky Show. How much fun has that been to have that outlet for the sport?
It's been fun. Ben's a riot. He and I, we have different personalities, but in my opinion, we have the exact same ideals. And we think very alike, and so, but we just send our messages out very differently, and so I think as a result, we probably have a good chemistry on our podcast, and that's an absolute hobby. Ben and I aren't getting rich off of that by any stretch, and we barely cover our production costs, but it is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it, and I hope that our listeners enjoy it. It's nice to probably hear different vantage points from people that have been competitive athletes, and then we're also not traditional journalists, so to speak. So we don't have to perhaps speak as in the traditional tongue or language of a journalist. So we're able to speak maybe more freely. So I think that's a little bit refreshing for folks, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I love talking to Ben. I think he's a very, very smart guy, so it's fun to bounce things off of him.
Is our sport in a good place right now, Tommy?
I think it is. There's always room to improve, like anything, self-improvement, business improvement, society improvement. And wrestling, the state of our sport is no different. I think that we talk about it on our show, but, we darn near got thrown out of the Olympics. And I think ever since that point, we've made a faster step each year towards where we need to be. I think that we're not quite as stuck in the mud and complacent as we used to be as a wrestling community. And I wish that we would move faster. I wish that maybe our leadership was a little bit more authoritative and compelling than they are right now. And I mean globally. But by the same token, to say that we aren't improving at a faster rate than we were 8 years ago, I mean, we absolutely are. We're doing a lot of great things. And American wrestling is doing a great job. I mean, our Junior World Championship performance speaks to that. And I think the culture and the dynamic that we have on this world team, freestyle, Greco, and women's, in particular freestyle, I follow it more closely, it's pretty special. So I think that from a number of angles, our sport's in a very good place, and we should be proud.
What's your magic wand look like if you could make one change to the sport? What would that be?
People are going to hang me on nail me to the cross for this, but I think if we were a universal style that was more aligned with the Olympic styles, we would absolutely dominate at the world and Olympic level. And by virtue of that, we would create more heroes that were more marketable, were more a better asset for commercialization and getting them into the mainstream. And I think participation would increase. Now, I think that's a huge overarching discussion. There's a lot of directions we could go with that comment there. But if our style, if our scholastic style was much more closely relatable to the freestyle or Greco-Olympic styles, I think within 5 or 6 years you would see astronomically different results at the Olympic level. And I don't like it when people compare to, well, look at these guys that skip college. They don't do much better or worse than the guys who do scholastic. We don't have a system that we can even compare to what I'm suggesting. There is no data, there is no information that could even validate the claim I just made, because we've never had a universal style that's similar to the Olympic style. But if we did that in our system from the bottom up, I think within 5 or 6 years you'd see some amazing results. But it's just a presumption. I can't prove it. You know what I mean?
Well, we can prove one thing is that Rudis is a great brand and that you're the co-owner of that. And I don't have much other than Rudis that I'll wear as far as T-shirts and the clothing line. That's what we sell in the Gable Museum gift shop. So highly recommended. I've never seen anything like it. You have great bags and apparel, and wish you all the best with that. And I've really enjoyed catching up with you here on this show. We've tried to get you on here for a little while, and it didn't work last year, but I'm glad it worked out this year that we could have you on and get your insight.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate having me on, and hope to be in touch soon.
All right, that was a great interview with Tommy Rowlands. He was a 2-time NCAA wrestling champion for Ohio State, co-owner of Rudis. Highly recommend it. Stop by the Gable Museum. We have a great product line there as well. It's been a fun show. Jason Bryant filled in for Doug Van Gelder. Scott Venzloff was on
our production board here.
Your production board. It's been a great show. For Tommy Rowlands and Jason Bryant, you've been listening to On the Mat.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.